Sport Fishing on the Fly is brought to you by Togen's Fly Shop, Maui Jim Sunglasses, and Hardy Rods and Reels. Well, today on the bench I want to tie you up the Mikulak Sedge. Now it is one of the, if not the best dry fly pattern you're going to use when traveling sedge adults are on top of the water and emerging. Make sure you have these materials ready before you tie the fly. For the hook, we'll use a Togen's 3X long curved size 8. We'll use some 8/0 pale olive thread to tie with, some natural elk hair for the tail, some natural elk hair for the wings, some UV2 CLX dubbing in dark olive for the body, and a brown saddle hackle for the hackle. So to start the fly off, I've put the hook in the vise, and I'm going to actually build up a good layer of thread. I want to cover the entire hook. And it goes a lot quicker if you have a rotary vise. I could use the rotary function, but I'm just going to cover up the whole hook with thread. Now the thread's on, I've taken a pinch between my thumb and my finger of elk hair, and you got a whole bunch of this fluff on the back. Just make sure you pull all that fluff out before you tie it in. And then we want to stack the elk hair. So you put it in your stacker and stack it nice so it's all even. Now that I have the deer hair stacked, I'm going to measure out just a small amount. Again, it's only going to be, a 1/2 inch, just about probably double as wide as the hook gap. Put it in the tail, and when you put it in, when you lay on elk hair, take at least two or three loose wraps, and then wind forward. And as you wind forward, tighten up. And what we're going to do is cover up a lot of the hook with this elk hair, because we're going to tie this in and build up the body. So we'll cover most of that and then trim off your excess. Now the tail's tied in, I'm going to take a pinch. Again, you don't need a whole bunch. You need about 2 or 3 wraps of dubbing here. So I'm just going to take a pinch of the dubbing, keep it onto the line, just dub it on your thread, and take a few wraps, and I usually go over it with the thread a little bit. And you just want a small amount of dubbing there. Now we take another pinch of our elk hair, and we're actually going to pull out all the rough stuff at the end, stack it, and tie it in as the first wing. Now when you tie it in as the first wing, I'm going to go about halfway the length of the tail, halfway down the tail. Again, 1, 2, 3 loose wraps, and then tighten up. This way your wing won't flare on you. It'll keep it nice and flat on the hook and only flare it slightly. And that's what we want. Now we're going to take another pinch of dubbing, and again, just enough to take about 3 or 4 wraps up the hook to form a little bit more of the body. Now we take another clump of our elk hair, and again we're going to set it about halfway down the first wing we put in. Take 1, 2, 3 loose wraps, move forward a little bit, and then tighten up. And again, that'll allow that wing to lay down nicely on the hook and won't flare on you. Now that we have the second wing tied in, you can take a little bit more dubbing just to finish off the body, and leave yourself about 1/2 inch near the eyelet to finish off with the final wing and the hackle. Now I've taken my final clump of elk hair, and I'm going to again pull out all the fluff at the end and stack it, and then tie it in as the third wing. Now when we tie it in as the third wing, we're going to go halfway again down the second wing. And this time, again, we want 1, 2 or 3 loose wraps and then tighten. But don't cut off your excess yet. What we're going to do is just wrap that forward and pull it up, and we're going to leave a little head on the fly. So when you cut this, leave yourself a good 1/2 inch of a flared head on the fly, just so it can wake in the water. Now that we have the final wing tied in and a little bit of a a flared head on the fly. We're going to tie a hackle in just behind the head, actually in front of that third wing. And we're just going to take, 4 or 5 wraps of the hackle to build a hackle on the fly. Once I have the hackle tied in, I'm going to move my thread forward. I always like to whip finish in front of the head on the fly, just so that that head stands up and it can actually wake in the water. So we'll whip finish right at the front, behind the head, or in front of the head, just at the eyelet. Now to finish the fly off, I like to trim the bottom hackle directly flat, just flush. So I'm just taking my scissors, laying it exactly parallel to the hook and cutting off the bottom. I don't worry about trimming off the top, just the bottom hackle, so it lays flat on the water. And there it is, the finished Mikulak sedge. Again, as I said in the intro, it is one of the best, if not the best, dry fly pattern you're going to use when there's traveling sedge coming off and skittering on the top water. Very exciting, something you have to try fly fishing.